Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to do something a little bit special. We are going to create a holding space, a really safe, empathetic environment to explore a profoundly beautiful and complex psychological dream. We'll be looking closely at a deeply personal source text that documents a therapeutic dialogue all about major life transitions, vulnerability, and the deeply hidden workings of the subconscious mind. Whether you're a seasoned psychology buff or you're just, fascinated by how our minds process huge changes, you're going to find this journey absolutely rewarding. So let's settle in and listen to what the subconscious is actually trying to tell us. Picture this. You wake up from a deep sleep and there is just one crystal clear sentence echoing in your mind. I want to set up a firewall. That is exactly what the dreamer in our source material experienced. It's such a fascinating, almost jarring statement to hear welling up from the depths of the psyche, isn't it? And it perfectly introduces the central tension of our analysis today. I mean, let's just pause and think about that for a second. A firewall? How on earth does a modern tech term, something we'd normally associate with IT departments and computer networks, end up in our deep subconscious? Instead of rushing right into clinical diagnoses, let's just gently unpack the architecture of this dream together. Let's look at the pieces the subconscious has laid out on the table for us. Okay, let's dive into this and look closely at the actual imagery the psyche has offered up. First, we have a man. Then we have three completely different groups of women approaching from various directions. And finally, we have that definitive, striking statement, I want to set up a firewall. Now, without judging any of this, we can see a really clear dynamic forming. Someone is perceiving a massive influx of energy and feels a sudden urgent need to manage it. Now, looking at this through a professional Jungian lens, that man in the dream, he isn't necessarily a literal person, and he certainly isn't an attacker. He actually represents the ego. The ego is our conscious mind. It stands for our reason, our judgment, and our everyday psychological boundaries. So this man saying he wants a firewall is really the ego attempting to establish some healthy, much-needed self-protection in the face of a rapidly changing environment. And what about those three groups of women? Well, in Jungian symbolism, a collective group of women usually represents the anima, our inner feminine energy. This encompasses our emotions, our relational dynamics, and our collective feelings. Notice how they're coming from three different directions? They aren't enemies at all. They actually represent a massive, overwhelming influx of relational energy, emotions, and external expectations moving toward the dreamer from every side of life. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the subconscious totally flips the script on what a firewall means. If you dream of a massive brick wall or a heavy iron gate, that usually means isolation. You're shutting the world out. But a firewall is different. A firewall manages connections. It's actually a highly mature, incredibly positive psychological filter. It's basically saying, hey, I'm not rejecting connection. I'm just making absolutely sure I let the important, nourishing things in while keeping the harmful, overwhelming stuff out. To really get what's going on here, we have to ground our clinical analysis in the dreamer's waking life. The source reveals that this individual recently retired from a very prestigious career as a professor and a therapist. They're stepping out of those safe, established roles. On top of that, they just published a deeply personal picture book based on their own life. And because of this brave vulnerability, they are feeling a profound dual desire. They desperately want to be seen and blessed by others, but simultaneously, they are absolutely terrified of being flooded by public judgment. And honestly, that brings us to the real emotional weight of this creator's journey. The dream is just beautifully illustrating this delicate dance between wanting to be loved and needing to protect your inner core. The message from the subconscious is profoundly empathetic here. It's telling them, keep open, share your story, receive those blessings, but whatever you do, don't lose your boundaries. But here's where the analysis takes a really deep, unexpected psychological pivot. You see, in Jungian therapy, we pay very close attention to spontaneous associations, those random things that suddenly pop into your head right after talking about a dream. They often reveal the true culprit behind our anxieties. Right after discussing the firewall dream, the dreamer suddenly remembered an old army buddy named Chi Hanwei. Why him? Why right now? Let's take a closer look. Let's gently unpack this association because it's super telling. The dreamer recalled that this army buddy was associated with triad culture and KTVs. He avoided work, was pretty lazy, and constantly bragged about his massive power and influence on the outside. But here is the critical part. The dreamer eventually found out it was all a lie. The guy's reputation was completely fabricated. On the surface, sure, he was a bad influence, but underneath all that bragging, he was hiding a really deep, sad vulnerability. To elevate our understanding of this, we can turn to the psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott's concept of the false self. You see, this army buddy wasn't just maliciously lying to be a jerk. His lies were a tragic way to survive. The false self is a defensive facade. When we feel incredibly vulnerable or inadequate, we sometimes create this exaggerated, powerful image to protect our true selves and just maintain a sense of value. The army buddy needed to seem huge on the outside because inside, he felt incredibly small. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive crossroads the dreamer is standing at right now. On one side, we see the army buddy's path, building a completely fake, grand image to hide behind. But on the other side, we have the dreamer's current, brave path, deliberately shedding those prestigious societal roles to share their true, naked vulnerabilities through their art. These are literally two completely opposite directions in life. So, taking all of this in, I want to ask you a question. Let's just sit with this for a moment. What is that firewall really protecting against? It's not just protecting against external criticism or mean comments. The subconscious brought up that specific army buddy for a very, very specific reason. So the crucial point is this: the firewall is actually protecting against an internal temptation. It's protecting the dreamer from building a brand new persona. Because think about it, when you share your art and people applaud you, it's so tempting to just become the character they want you to be. People might start treating this retired therapist as some perfect, flawless, wise old man. The firewall is there to stop the dreamer from adopting that new mask just to please an adoring audience. In the dreamer's picture book, the main character, little civet Momo, eventually does become a wise elder. But what makes the story so touching isn't that Momo becomes perfect. It's that they are willing to admit they were lost, hurt, and struggling. True wisdom isn't about putting on some grand, flawless show like the army buddy did. True wisdom is realizing you literally no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. Which brings us to the synthesis of this entire therapeutic journey, a profound process Carl Jung called individuation. Individuation is all about becoming your true, undivided self. It means you can survive the applause and the praise without letting the audience redefine who you truly are. You can accept their blessings with a completely soft, open heart, but you still maintain those clear, mature boundaries. Your firewall keeps your core totally intact. As we wrap up this exploration today, I want to leave you with this final thought. We all face major transitions. We all crave deep connection, and we all fear judgment. I highly encourage you to look at your own boundaries. On this stage of your life, is your firewall protecting the real vulnerable you, or is it just protecting another mask? Thank you so much for joining me in this holding space today. I really hope this exploration helps you build the kind of boundaries that let the true blessings in.